Hey, welcome to the show, Leading and Growing Your Real Estate Business. This is Coach James Short, aka Shorty, and this is a show for those within the real estate industry wanting to lead and grow their real estate business. It's a series of interviews that we conduct for those within the industry. So we're finding out what those leaders are within the industry, what makes them tick, what's their story, what are their strategies, and how to become the leaders and the growers within the industry. But also, it's an interview series with those outside of the industry. I'm always a big believer of looking at a whole different part of the pie rather than just focusing on one part of the pie. Because what it does, it allows you to have a different perspective, allows you to get snippets or golden nuggets from those outside of the industry that can look in the industry and go, there's a different perspective. And so I encourage you to reach out to the guests. I encourage you to lean into these series to find out how can these pieces of information, experiences, stories help you lead and grow your real estate business. And before we get underway with our latest episode, just a little shout out to these amazing crew at Magic Mind. Magic Mind has been it's a productivity hit in the bottle. I've been using these supplementations now for a number of weeks, and the clarity, the focus, and the performance that I've been getting from these nutrients in a bottle. They've got amazing vitamins, amazing minerals. They've got a bunch of mushrooms in there as well. It's a great productivity hack that I've been using every single day. So if you want to try it out, head on over to www.magicmind.com/James Short, and you'll be able to get amazing discounts when you subscribe and when you try the product. And at the checkout, simply add in James Short 20 to get your discount. So head on over, Magic Mind, productivity in a bottle. Oh, I love it. Now, on with the show. It's an honor and a privilege to have this amazing guest with us today. It's always nice to get someone outside of the industry to have a different perspective and different viewpoint, and I guess a different set of skills that we can all take away, no matter of if we're in the industry or if we're buying, selling, managing, or even helping managing teams. And that's why this next guest, I think, is going to provide, I know she's going to provide some amazing gems of gold pieces of nuggets we can take away to implement for ourselves, for our businesses, and also for our teams. Chantel Brodrick, wow. She's one of the most well-regarded and experienced MCs in the Australian fitness industry. She is, get this, 5 times host of the AusActive Awards, 6 times host of the Filex Business Summits, and 2 times host of the New Zealand Exercise Industry Awards. Furthermore, she has presented across the world at events including IRSA, Idea World, and the Athletic Business Show. Wow. In 2019, she was recognized as one of the 20 Women Who Inspire by IRSA, Club Business International magazine. Whoa, she's a mover and shaker. And in addition to live presenting, Chantal has interviewed more than 300 business leaders, authors, coaches, and health professionals during her time hosting the Fitness Business Podcast and Mind 123 Health Series. Chantel was on the board of directors of AusActive between 2019 and 2023 and Active Queensland Industry Alliance from 21 to 23. Prior to the fitness industry, Chantel spent 15 years working in media and has extensive experience in sales and marketing. It is an honor and a privilege to have her on the show. Chantel, thank you so much for joining us.
James, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your show. I'm really excited to chat to all of your listeners today.
So good, so good. So the question is, why should someone stay to the end of this interview? What are we going to go into?
Look, I definitely think we will hopefully uncover a few gems for your listeners out there, and that might be in the field of, nailing down their, becoming a person of influence and really talking about how they can become the go-to person within their specialty field. And then right at the very end, I'm going to save them and I'll share a couple of my all-time favorite books with your listeners right at the very end.
Love it. So cool. So talk to me about the journey, right? Because you spent a bunch of time in the media, then you moved into the industry, the fitness industry. How did that all come into fruition? Share us a little bit about that journey.
I initially started my career working in media, so media buying, which back then, which was a long time ago now, back then it was very much in the space of traditional media like television buys, radio, magazine, that type of thing. And I transitioned then into advertising sales, so working for Channel 7 and magazines for quite some time. During that whole period, I actually really enjoyed what I did. It was a really good way to, I guess, learn from some amazing leaders and to get my teeth stuck into the corporate side of life. And probably about 12 years into doing that, I suddenly fell in love with fitness. And I had decided at the time that I wanted to go and study to be a body pump instructor. Just body pump. That was my
I remember those
goal.
days.
That was my one goal. And I had never intended on making fitness my career. However, I went and studied body pump, and then I went and did my PT cert, and all of a sudden I found myself gradually phasing out of my media role and diving into the fitness industry. James, I had an amazing opportunity where I got the chance to basically, I got gifted a not a scholarship, but I guess it was a PT contract with one of the really big national chains at the time. I won that, which was amazing. Right. So it gave me the chance to basically have a bit of a taste of the industry. And what I found out was that after a couple of months of doing the fitness side of it, so PTing and teaching group fitness, I really, really missed the business side of it. So I actually ended up working with active management, Justin Tamsett, who you know,
yes,
and
JT,
I was doing,
yep.
and I was doing some PT business coaching. And that was kind of a really nice blend for me of my corporate background and then my newfound love of fitness. So I did that for a number of years before we launched the Fitness Business Podcast, which is my absolute favorite thing that I've ever done in my entire career, as you know, what it's like hosting a podcast. So that was a major highlight for me. So yeah, that's kind of how the transition happened from media into the world of fitness.
And so taking that, what are you noticing as the commonalities between the media industry and the fitness industry? And I guess some of those characteristics that you've taken from both, which has led to where you are today?
I think the main observation that I made coming from an industry that I would say had been around a lot longer, was more established, into a much younger industry. As you know, the fitness world and gyms as a business, and even personal trainers running their business, is all still relatively young compared to many other industries out there. So rather than find commonalities originally, what I found was that there were gaps, which when you are doing business coaching, and at the time working with JT, he was coaching the gyms, as he still does, and advising the gyms, and then I was coaching the personal trainers. And so there was this wonderful opportunity to be able to plug some of those gaps from what I had learnt from a corporate perspective and what I could carry across into the fitness industry perspective. So that was a really good thing. The commonalities lay in all of the standard things that it takes to run a business. So how to lead teams, how to manage teams, how to implement systems and processes to make sure that your business is running efficiently as much as possible. I know that you had the wonderful Steve Jensen on your show recently. How do we work on our sales in order to make sure that we've got a constant pipeline coming in, so there were commonalities in the form of what are those standard things that we need to do to be able to run a profitable and successful business.
Yeah, so good, so good. Talk to me about, and one of those things that no matter what industry you're in, is about being a person of influence.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about that. Why is that so important in no matter what industry that you're in? Hey guys, just a little side note here. How's it going? Are you on track this year? I know that sometimes this part of the year we can feel like we're in a bit of a grind, a bit of in the trenches. Are you on track from the original plans that you set out for the rest of this year? What I've realized is that with this time of year, we get so distracted and we've got trying to chase so many shiny balls and go down so many rabbit holes. And that's why I created a program called the 90. It's a framework that actually allows you to achieve more in 90 days than ever before. Some of the feedback that we've got from some of the people that have used the process, the 90, is that they've achieved more in 90 days than the whole previous year. So if you'd like to have the tools, have the techniques, have the framework on the 90, so you and your team can achieve more in 90 days than ever before. What it does, and it impacts you of how to get clear, what you need to do, and who you need to be to show up in order to achieve the things you want to achieve over the next 90 days. Simply head over to jamesshort.com.au, click on join the waitlist, fill in your details, and one of the team members will be in touch and take you through the 90 framework. On with the show.
The reason that I think this is particularly important, and I wanted to specifically chat to you about it today, James, because I think it's really relevant for your listeners. Now, when I talk about being a person of influence or being the go-to person, it is a way that we can separate ourselves from the rest. It's the way that we can really make our mark, we can grow our brand, we can become the expert within a specific area. And that means that you stand out. It means that when someone is thinking about making a purchase or when someone's thinking about making a sale, you are the person that they think of. In the context of real estate, let's say, for example, I wanted to specialize in selling homes that are over $10 million, as an example, within my local region, then you want to be able to do everything that is in your control that you can possibly do to make sure that you have developed yourself as that go-to person, as the expert, as the person that knows more than anyone else, that has had the experience, that has the knowledge, that has done the research, that has done the work. So that becomes really important, when you're in a busy market or a saturated market, which was the case with a lot of fitness professionals. You don't want to be the standardized trainer, because what's the point of difference? Why would someone choose you? And I'm sure real estate's the same. I'm sure it's a very competitive market. So what are those ways that we can really create ourselves as that go-to person to make ourselves stand out from the rest of the crowd? So I have sort of had this conversation, done this presentation with a lot of people, and in the fitness industry, I should say. And it really comes down to, James, making sure that we can build up our content, that we can build up our brand, that we can build up our profile, to have a whole bunch of supporting material that sits under our brand, so that when someone is making that decision, when that person that owns the $15 million waterfront property thinks it's time for me to sell, then they start Googling and they find, James, you are the person that needs to sell this property. So back to your original question, why is it so important to become a key person of influence? Because that is what is going to lead people to you, to your business, to your brand, and allow you to be successful and profitable.
So true, so true. Where do you think, from your experience and from your guidance, where do you think a lot of people, though, fall down of, they know that they need to be this go-to person, this person of influence, but where do they fall down from actually not fulfilling that? What are those traps that people get into?
It can become really overwhelming when you start to think about what are those support mechanisms that I need to build to be able to become that person? So what is the content that I need to create to become that person? So I think that feeling of overwhelm can really start to creep in on people. And then the other side of it is, 9 times out of 10, we're in the trenches. We're just trying to get the job done from a day-to-day perspective, let alone devoting time to actually building that content and building our knowledge base. So I generally say to people, James, what is a really good starting point is to have a think about, A, what is your favorite way to communicate with people? And B, what sort of communication does your audience want to hear? Do they want to hear your communication? Do they want to read your communication? Do they want to watch your communication? Because if you can tap into the way that you're target market consumes that information, then that's a really good starting point. So you might find out that your audience, perhaps your target market within your area, perhaps they're very time poor. So perhaps their best form of information is in a podcast. Perfect. Short format podcast where we can educate them about everything that they need to know when it comes to selling a multi-million-dollar property, as an example. But perhaps on the flip side of that, they might prefer to read their content, and then we want to put a little bit more energy and a little bit more focus into our weekly newsletters or our blog posts or the content on our website. So that's kind of one little bucket that I would say is understanding what our target market really want. And then the other bucket is starting to think about, okay, how do I actually take that overwhelm that I mentioned up front, which can sometimes be the stumbling block or the hurdle to actually getting us to becoming that go-to person, that expert. How do I take that stumbling block and break it down to make it achievable? And the best advice that I can give to your listeners and to your audience when it comes to that is identifying what that thing is that you want to be known for. And I'll keep using the same example of perhaps I want to be the agent that is the go-to person for properties over $10 million, as an example. So if I think about that, and I've got a little exercise which I call the ideas hub, and I stick that in the middle of my ideas hub, and I said, that is what I want to be able to be known for. That's who I want to be. Then off the back of that little central ideas hub, we then want to choose 6 topics that surround that. 6 topics that are going to be things that I can educate my audience on, that I can use to inspire my audience, that is going to be interesting. So I choose my 6 subtopics, and then James, off the back of that, each of those 6 subtopics, I then break down into 10 micro topics.
Love it.
So as an example, I might say, I want to be the property salesperson for over $10 million houses. And one of the areas that I'm going to focus on is, let's say, you had a wonderful guest. You had Grant Gamble on recently that spoke about this. He was speaking about making sure that your the properties that you are on are also like eco-friendly, and you've got the green coming in. So perhaps that target market wants to know about what is important when it comes to building, buying, selling eco-friendly properties.
Yep.
Okay, so that's one of our subtopics. And then how can we break that subtopic down into 10 micro topics? Now, the reason that we do this, because what that exercise does is it takes us from being that go-to person to expanding to having 6 things to talk about to having 60 things to talk about.
Huge.
Which, as you would understand, is a couple of years worth of content, right?
Yep.
But what that allows us to do, if we circle all the way back to that overwhelm that I talked about, the stumbling block that stops many people from moving down this path, is that we don't need to tackle all of that at once. All we need to do is grab one of those micro topics and start creating a piece of content. And that's where our whole plan begins. That's where we start, because we've got it all there. We then just need to work our way through it one piece at a time. So just to recap, so we want to think about what our audience want to consume, how they want to consume the information, what we love to do, how we, do we love to talk or be on camera or write or whatever it might be? Where can we find the match between those 2 things? And then let's create all of these little micro topics, which are going to allow us to start building content for our audience, for our prospects, for our website, for all of our social media accounts. And it's just a really nice way to break it down and to combat that overwhelm that we talked about earlier.
Drop the mic right there, because that's huge, right? That's such a beautiful piece of how you've articulated that, because it goes from a big concept down into just the small bite-sized pieces. And I think coming back to that planning piece of spending that time to going through those different areas and chunking it down into further detailed areas. And I think, what you've nailed on is to make what can be seen as a complex, overwhelming piece to really, no, it doesn't need to be that way. and just break into 6, and then each of those areas. And then what you'll have is a clear roadmap of what you need to do to position yourself as that person of influence, that go-to person within the industry. I remember back when we had our fitness centers, every year in our business planning session, my business partner and I, we used to invite our top 10 to 20 clients in over 2 breakfasts. And we actually just got their feedback. It's like, what have we done well? What do we haven't done well? What do we need to improve? And what else do you want to see within the fitness centers? And like, it wasn't us coming up with the ideas, it was our clients coming up with the ideas. And you could easily segue that into, what are your past sales? Who do you like to deal with, and interview them? Get those bits of information of those 6 different topics if you're stuck, because it just makes it, there's so much information out there. You just got to ask the questions, right?
Exactly right. And when that person comes to selling that property and they're putting into their search engine and they're going to Google and they're typing, who is the best property sales expert for my ecologically, developed, architecturally designed house, over $20 million, you want your name to show up. And the only way your name is going to show up is if you've got content online, if you've got videos online, if you've got a podcast, if you've got great articles on your website. So this is all about, how do we build that foundation? How do we get all of that amazing content so that when they do Google, you're the one, or when the local newspaper or the local magazine needs someone to comment on what the property market is like, who are they going to call, right? That's what you need to keep coming back to. That's really what we're talking about here when we're talking about building your brand, being the go-to person, and being that person of influence within your industry.
So true. And it's really, that's a great piece, because what it does, so often, so many agents, they try and be everything to everyone. And what happens is that they feel like they keep on chasing their tail, because they're constantly trying to update their marketing, and it's like where you specify a certain niche, a certain area, and then you become like, I've got a bunch of clients who we've done this for, and their results have just gone through the roof, because now the industry knows who they are and who they serve. And then, as you've said, when they Google, sure enough, there they are.
Exactly.
There they are.
Trainers are the same in the fitness industry. There's a lot of generalists out there, and the ones that really stand apart are the ones that have really gone into that niche market and become the expert in that area.
Yeah, definitely. Chantel, on the show, we have a 60-second quiz to find out a little bit more about our guests. Are you willing to play?
Of course I am, James. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. All right, cool. Here we go. Favorite movie?
Oh, this is a hard one because I'm not a movie person. I'm going to have to go with my old school growing up, Dirty Dancing. That'll give you an indication of my age.
Favorite food?
Favorite food is anything that is either homegrown, locally grown. Yeah.
Nice.
That's my go-to.
Fantastic. Favorite holiday destination?
Whitsundays.
Beautiful.
Sailing Whitsundays.
Beautiful. Do you have a morning routine?
I do. So I'm a 4 a.m. wake up every day, and I am like Mel Robbins, kind of 5 seconds. So I'm out of bed within 5 seconds. That's part of my countdown. Get out of bed, get the feet on the floor within 5 seconds. Always have the gym gear laid out. I'm a morning exerciser, so I love training in the morning. So it is literally out of bed, jump into the gym gear, get to the gym by about 4:30, and train, and then come home and start the rest of my day.
Fantastic. And do you have an evening routine?
I do. So my evening routine is making sure that I switch off the phone, that anything digital by 8 p.m. If I can in the morning and in the night, I am 100% try and get outside to just see the sunlight. So that's part of my morning routine as well. It's also part of if I can see those kind of sundown colors, that's really important as well, just to sort of start to wind down for the evening. So nothing digital after 8 o'clock. Try and catch a little bit of sunset if I can, and then pretty much I am like an 8:30, I am out in bed, That's part of what happens when you wake up at 4 a.m. though. So I try and keep my routine very, very consistent. And I find that gives me the most energy for my day and makes me feel really good. So I try and stick to it when I can.
Fantastic. And do you have a most embarrassing moment?
Yeah, I do. I was having a think about this when you sent those questions over. When I was back in media, when I was in corporate, was always very distracted on the phone, on the computer, getting things done. One day I had popped into the kitchen and put some toast on, completely forgot about it. Next thing I know, there was smoke pouring out of the kitchenette. The fire alarms went off. If you know North Sydney, in New South Wales, big buildings, entire building was evacuated because of my toast.
Your toast, oh my
caught on
goodness.
fire. Yeah, so it was very embarrassing when everyone found out.
Dear me, dear me. If you could choose 5 inspirational people to have dinner with, they could be dead or alive, who would they be?
Yeah, my first one will be Sir David Attenborough.
Mhm.
That would be number one. I think he would be amazing. And on a similar note, Jane Goodall, just to pick their brains and try and understand a little bit about what they see. I would say Bill Bryson, who is one of my favorite authors. I just think he is completely amazing and he's traveled so much of the world. So I think that would be really interesting. Another one would be Ryan Holiday, who's another author who writes on Stoicism. He's one of my favorite authors. And then the 5th one would actually be my mum. I lost my mum when I was super young, so I've never really had the chance to have the dinner party. So just to chat to her would be amazing.
Beautiful. If you were Prime Minister for the day, what's one thing that you'd change?
I would put significant amount of money into preventative healthcare and get people utilizing the gyms, utilizing trainers, just growing awareness around the importance of exercise far more than the amount of money that we spend on fixing people after things have gone wrong.
Yeah, definitely. So true. What's your best piece of advice?
Focus on the things that you can control.
I love that. I love that. And what's the best way for people to follow your journey, reach out and ask more questions?
Look, people are so welcome to connect with me. I would love that. So my 2 best platforms are LinkedIn and Instagram. So just Chantel Brodrick on LinkedIn and Chantel Brodrick Fitness on Instagram. And yeah, if anyone wants to reach out, connect, have a chat, please, reach out on either of those 2 platforms.
Fantastic. Now, you did mention a couple of books at the beginning. What's your recommendations?
I did. Okay. So for any of your listeners that haven't yet read it, one of my all-time favorite books from a business culture leadership perspective is The Happiness Advantage by Shawn Achor. A really wonderful book. Have you seen his TED Talk?
I haven't.
James?
I will be watching it. Yep.
I will share his TED Talk with you. Really, really fabulous TED Talk, one of the all-time highest rated or watched ones. So I'll give that to you for the show notes. And his book, Happiness Advantage, is excellent. It's basically about how your personal happiness affects your work profitability and performance, essentially. And that's one of his books. The other one that I would say is, actually there's 2 others which are more so in the health space. One of them is Peter Attia's Outlive, relatively new book, but really touches on the 4 big diseases that are killing people these days and the importance of exercise. And it's a really detailed book. And then the other one I would say is, I have one more. Robin Sharma is the author and is called The Wealth That Money Can't Buy. It's only came out probably about 3 or 4 months ago, I would say, but the best way I can describe that book is every single lesson, life, leadership, management, relationship, every single lesson that you could possibly learn in a lifetime, all compiled into one very, very well-written book.
Amazing.
MI3.
Excellent. Chantel, always appreciative. Thank you so much for joining us today and being an amazing guest and dropping some amazing gold nuggets into our chat today. So thank you once again.
My pleasure, James. Thank you so much for having me.